This is the story of my journey to Everest, and it really is also the Irish story of Everest, the initial story. And of course, it didn't start with our expedition back in '93. It started with the story of Irish involvement with Everest really started with Charles Howard Bury. If you're driving the road to Galway or Westport, you'll see around Mullingar signs for Belvedere House. It's actually owned now by Westmeath County Council, and indeed there's hope to put a museum there to Howard Bury, a room dedicated to Howard Bury, and to Anthony Riley, who also was a great pioneer of the Alps, who also came from Mullingar. But this guy, he was born in London, but his mother was the daughter of the Earl of Charleville, and he lived and he inherited Charleville Castle in Tullamore. And many will know the tallest tree in Ireland was actually he actually brought it back from his travels. It stands in that. But he was educated in Tullamore with a governess, and later he was sent to Eton and to Sandhurst Military College, and he was posted to India as a captain of the 60th Rifles, and he was very much involved in big game hunting, and he was an absolutely dab hand at picking up languages, and he not only picked up, he was also able to pick up the various dialects of different languages in Asia. And during his lifetime, he inherited Belvedere House. So he had these two huge family, huge family fortune, and of course they were huge landlords in the Midlands. During his, when he was in India on his military journey, he used a lot of his time to take trips, and he made a trip into the Tian Shan Mountains, one of the early explorers of Tian Shan Mountains. And these are a couple of his photographs that he took in 1913. And this is a couple of his own photographs. So he was a particularly good photographer. He was a botanist. He was a highly educated and articulate man. When World War I broke out, he was obviously, as a battalion commander, he fought, and if you look at the names of the battles he fought in, Arras, the Somme, Passchendaele and Ypres, and of course he was taken prisoner at Ypres, and he was in a German camp until the end of the war. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Order, but after the war he was successful on behalf of the Royal Geographical Society, who jointly with the Alpine Club sought approval for the first Everest reconnaissance expedition. And he travelled to the Indian office in Delhi, and then he also met the Sikkim and the Tibetan authorities. And as a result of his travels, and also the fact that he was able to self-fund, he was able to fund his own travels and fund his own participation in the expedition, etc. He was made leader of the first reconnaissance expedition, which mapped the approaches to, and all the places we know now were all first mapped by this expedition. In the process of doing his, getting approval for Everest, a person who was instrumental was this guy, this picture you see here with Charles Bell, and who then met with His Holiness the 13th Dalai Lama. And believe it or not, what actually settled the deal was a couple of machine guns. The Tibetans were afraid of Chinese advances on them at that point, and what actually got them approval was agreement to supply the British to supply machine guns and ammunition. That's what actually secured the agreement. Bell also, and this is very significant in Nepalese history, he advised Howard Bury, if he was going to use porters, to use the Nepalese Sherpa in preference to the Tibetans, because he deemed that the Tibetans were far too independent. So the Tibetan, of course, the Sherpa people are people who moved from Tibet into Nepal, and he reckoned they were they were much more agreeable people to deal with. This is the expedition. This is the actual expedition team, the picture. And it's interesting, the average age was 44 and a half years. And you can see they're all, mature men, I suppose is the best way to describe it. But Howard Bury can be seen, I'm not sure which one is the middle one, is it? Oh, that's it, yeah. Howard Bury is this gentleman here. Yeah. And to show you this is George Lee Mallory, the famous Mallory, and this is Edward Oliver Wheeler, who was also had strong Irish connections. But you can see that Rayborn, the guy on the end there, he was a great, anyone who's climbed in Scotland, you'll see all sorts of Rayborn's gullies, and he was one of the great climbers of the Scottish tradition. And now they're a mixture of cartographers and mountaineers. So Wheeler and Moorshead, this Moorshead is this guy here, they were the cartographers. They were actually working for the Indian Survey. They were mapping and charting the whole Himalaya at the time, and they came in as the mappers. Howard Bury, while he wasn't strictly speaking a mountaineer, he was a widely travelled man who was an army and military commander with great presence and who could speak multiple Asian dialects. He could speak in, he was a terrifically well-educated man. And this is the map. They produced two maps. One is the approach map. They started in Darjeeling, and they walked through Sikkim in right up to the borders with Tibet, and they crossed in over the border from Nepal into Tibet, Sikkim into Tibet, and so this is the map. There is a modern book which has been edited by Marion Keeney, who is the county librarian in Westmeath, a beautiful book, which originally was written by Charles Howard Bury and George Lee Mallory, and that book is still available. You get it in any library. It's a really interesting book. Everybody knows Shagar Zong, but this is Howard Bury's picture of Shagar Zong, and of course this marked when they got there, they were on the Tibetan side of, and of course those early expeditions they did. Their ambition was to climb Everest originally from that side, and it was only with the Maoists moving, the Chinese taking and annexing Tibet in 1950, which forced all the attempts for Everest. The subsequent climbing of Everest was from the south side rather than from the north side. But all of the early attempts were from the north side. This is Edward Oliver Wheeler. His father was from Maddoxtown in County Kilkenny, and his father, he lived in Kilkenny until he was around age 12 or 13, and then the family travelled. His father was a doctor. His father travelled and they went to the same school as Ernest Shackleton in London, it was quite interesting. But at the age of 17, his father emigrated to Canada, and he had learned the art of photogeometry, and as a result he was given the job to map out the Indian reservations from Canada. And when he finished that job, they gave him the job of mapping out the Rockies and the Selkirks. And in the process, of course, he climbed a huge amount of the mountain, made first ascents of many of the Rockies. And his son, Oliver,